All right. Oh, it says it's not included. Yeah, you might have to go to the.
It's included. It's on there now.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
All right, bro.
Yeah, if you go to the party settings, that should get it in there for you. Wow, this is a cool looking map. But yeah, so if you need any help finding it, let me know. Oh man. But yeah, so basically, the question is about whether or not someone could be saved without Jesus. But even deeper, because the obvious answer to that from a Christian perspective would obviously be, John 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. But then the biggest thing a lot of Christians ask at that point is, what about people that have never heard of Jesus? Which is a good question to ask as a follow-up. Many Christians give a lot of very interesting answers. But I ponder one of the easiest ways to go about it. I've heard a lot of people like William Lane Craig and people like this talk about it. A lot of people will quote Romans 1 and 2, talking about how people will be judged based on what they know. And if someone never knows or hears about Jesus in that sense, then it would be hard for God to judge somebody on that
Yeah.
instance, obviously, so I think that's one of the easiest ways to go about it. But even deeper, I think the other time we were talking, I also mentioned Revelation, because this one also, I think, makes it somewhat clear, because in Revelation it says that we will be judged based on our deeds, our actions, right? So,
Well, in the Revelation, it talks about
yeah,
the great white throne judgment, and then there's the judgment seat of
yeah,
Christ. And isn't the
it,
great white
yeah.
throne judgment going to be for the non-believers, and the seat of Christ going to be for the believers' rewards? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, yeah, because there's the judgment seat of Christ, which Paul mentions in a lot of his work. We see this in First Corinthians.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you're mentioning the what's called the Great White Throne judgment, which I can see why people say, like, yeah, this is strictly for non-believers. But at the same time, another way of looking at it is like, I ponder the idea that, like, and again, so like, think of it like this. Imagine there's someone who has never heard Jesus, right? He
Yeah,
would
like
technically
somebody
be
who
a
lives
part
in
of
like a
that.
like somebody who
Yeah,
lives
so
in
like,
like a remote village or something.
right, right. So like, even in these types of interesting scenarios, a person like this, oh man, they could this could be the moment that, like, they could hear about Jesus, you know what I mean? So God could this could be a moment in which this happens. But I actually have another really interesting thing that I was really thinking about this. What if, and I don't know if you've even heard of these types of stories, but these are becoming even more increasingly. I see a lot. I've seen them in debates between, I can't remember the guy's name. If it's Justin Bass, I think was the guy's name,
I haven't heard that guy.
and he's a I don't know exactly what he is, but he debated a guy by the name of Bart Ehrman, who's a scholar, and they were talking about some of these ideas. But one thing that they brought up was that how they were talking about the validity of the gospel, but different context, but the same kind of idea got brought up. And at one point, he brought up how Muslims in these areas that have never heard of Jesus, what has happened to them is these Muslims are all having dreams and visions of
I've
Jesus.
seen a lot of that on Instagram lately, bro. I've really
Yeah,
seen a lot of
yeah,
that.
and these guys are just like, they wake up with a dream about Jesus, and
And they're
they
converting
don't
to
know it's Jesus
Christianity.
because they've never known or heard of Jesus, you know what I mean? So they don't realize that it's actually Jesus.
Yeah.
And then by the time it comes to it, they describe it as like a guy in a white robe and whatnot. And then what happens is the guy in the white robe in their dream or vision then comes out and says to them, like, hey, go to location X. And once you go to location X, you'll meet a guy by the name of Billy. And once you meet Billy, then Billy's going to give you the information that I want you to know right? And then they meet this Billy guy in this place that they were told to go, and next thing you know, it's some Christian that God has, you know, you could say, prepped for them to meet. You know what I mean? So very interesting insight. But basically, this is another way for me to go about saying, like, well, what if God is revealing himself to Muslims in that way too, or people that have never heard of him? It's not just strictly Muslims. It could be a Hindu kid, for example. You know what I mean? Or
Chris,
some disingenuous tribe of that someone's never met. But yeah, what do you got, man?
you can take this a whole step farther. Not only the people
Yeah.
who've never heard the gospel, but also like the age of accountability thing as well.
Oh, uh-huh.
Or
Okay,
like
that's another one.
or another thing, maybe somebody who isn't like mentally all there, things like that, how they'll be judged.
Right.
And that's it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree with that too, for sure. Yep, I think there's some good reasons to think that too, for sure. Yep, because that's people talk about, you know, there isn't like a verse that says like the age of accountability or something like that, for example, but
Yeah.
the concept actually comes from a passage in with David. So you remember the story where David commits adultery
Yeah.
and then tries to get one of his soldiers killed to hide this adultery?
Yeah, to have
Well,
the evidence.
Exactly, and in that scenario, David's baby ends up dying. Unfortunately, it's very sad, and because of it, though, David at the end of it says, "I will see my child again." Right? So he's implying that that baby is with God, you know, because David knows he's going to be with God when he dies, right? But it wasn't because David was good; it was because of the grace of God that he had faith in Yahweh alone. You know what I mean? Even though he had all these mistakes and all of these things that had gone wrong. But yeah, so, you know, age of accountability is another interesting thing. So, but I think there is some validity to it, you know, because how Michael Heiser and people like this have put forth ideas like, well, how can someone be guilty for something if they don't even know the guilt of it, right?
What's
Like,
right and wrong, yeah.
yeah, kids don't understand a lot of that yet. And there's a lot of good scriptures on this. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. Especially since we're in a live game too, but it's I can't remember the exact passage. I have a specific passage in my head, I just can't think of it right off the top of my head right now, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's one of the easiest ways to go about showing how can, you know, be saved without hearing the gospel. It's
Well, I'm going to take
I
that a
think
step
there's-
further.
yeah, what you got, man?
I've seen a lot of people talk about like baptism and things like that, but then they'll bring up the thief on the cross, you know.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because obviously he wasn't baptized. And
Yeah.
he wasn't a good guy. Yeah, he was saved strictly by, you know.
I've seen a lot. I think you might have made a
It's
video on
faith in
that subject,
Christ.
but I've seen a lot of people get in debates on that. The whole, where do we go when we die? The soul sleep versus, you know. I've seen a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Didn't you do a video on that? Or?
I do have a video on that. Yep. Because I feel like that's one of the passages that shows that view of soul sleep is incorrect. That's right.
Yeah. And then you remember when Saul too, when Saul dies, the spirit of Samuel appears to him and says, "You'll be with me," or something to that effect.
Oh, yep. For sure. That's a good one. One that I like to use in reference to this is when Paul says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, what a shot. That was a good match. But yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it up there, man. So I think that's good stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and like and subscribe for more.